Welcome to the Virtual Real Estate Investing Podcast. That sounded kind of polished, huh? Didn't it, man? What do you think?
It's been a while. We've taken like 2 weeks off or something. So I'm surprised you're able to nail the intro as good as you did.
We're like, hey, we're going to take vacation, but even though we have a million things going on, we're not going to let any of that slide. And then as we were in the middle of the knife fight, we we're like, oh my gosh, we're drowning.
Yeah, we had to take a week off. We were just dying. You were on vacation in Michigan. I was in Florida. It just didn't work out. I'm also sick. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm like sniffing a little bit. If the listeners can hear me, like my runny nose, I'm sorry, but the show must go on. We're going to do it. So we're here.
Yeah. I actually had a running nose this morning. My wife's like, oh, you must have allergies. And for some reason, I refuse to admit that I ever have allergies. So I'm like, nope, I don't have a good excuse, but I don't have allergies.
Yeah. That's what you do. Awesome.
Yeah. I'm not sure where we go with that. So let's just jump right into it. Today, we are talking about pay-per-click advertising. What does that mean? Why is it important to us? I think some of you have heard us talk about it before, but we're actually having some success with it now. So we just want to lay it out.
Yeah, we want to talk about it. I feel like in terms of all the marketing channels that off-market real estate operators use, like PPC for some reason is like the holy grail. Like everyone who's doing text messaging or direct mail, they're all like, oh my goodness, the PPC people, they're gods. That's obviously not true. But we felt we had to give it a go because we were looking to find something that was really, really scalable, right? That was really our motivation, and something that I guess like once you get it done right in one location or one geography, you can kind of copy and paste it in another. And also like cold calling and SMS is really hard. Like, I don't know what your thoughts are. I think I know what your thoughts are, but it's like somewhat of a hamster wheel. And I think we were kind of looking at PPC as a way to like slow that down a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all hard, right? It's all hard. It's just a different kind of hard. But first, I would say we have inbound marketing and we have outbound marketing, right? So outbound marketing is where we reach out to people, we call them, we text them, we send them letters and say, do you want to sell your house? Inbound marketing is where we try to get people to come to us, right? So I would say in the single family real estate space, I would say we are experts on outbound marketing. When it comes to cold call and text message, I think we're really, really good at it. We've had a lot of success, but we want to try to get better at inbound marketing. So we want to do this thing called pay-per-click. It's where someone types in sell my house fast in Google, and then it sees an ad, sees one of the ads up there at the top. Those people are paying for those ads to be there. And that's what we're talking about when we say pay-per-click, right? So generally, what are my thoughts here, right? Well, I think we want multiple marketing channels, right? So we want to make sure that we have a robust business that if the market changes, we can still have good marketing channels. And the bottom line is we were really good at text message, and then carriers have really hurt us there. So our text messages aren't going through. And now a lot of people have seen on their phone where it says scam likely. When someone's calling, it'll say scam likely. So that's happening to us as well. So we're having to fight that to try to stay ahead so we can get those calls going through. But the bottom line is we saw the writing on the wall that is, hey, text messaging or SMS is much more difficult today than it was a year ago. And then cold calling is much more difficult today than it was 4 months ago when we really started getting into it. So I think we wanted to make sure we added another channel. And then the awesome thing about pay-per-click advertising and inbound marketing is if you can get it to work, if you can get the numbers to work, it is really easy to double your budget, triple your budget. We're really focused in Texas right now. We could really easily, within a couple clicks, add Florida, where to do that with outbound marketing would take some more work. So generally that's an overview of why I think it's important. What do you think?
No, I agree. And it goes back to scalability, like doubling your budget in pay-per-click or Google ads, if you get it to work, could take 10 minutes, right? And then you got to tweak the campaigns afterwards and stuff, but it takes 10 minutes to just do that action. Doubling your budget for cold calling, like that means you're probably going to have to hire double the amount of people. That's not going to happen overnight. So you can scale cold calling or SMS to, I guess in theory, an infinite number, but what are you going to have? 100 employees, 200 employees? Like, I don't know any off-market dealers that have that much staff unless you're an iBuyer, right? So there is a little bit of a cap, I think, there, to your point. Go ahead.
Let's go into, we tried this last year and we failed. And we were like, screw you, PPC Advertising, we hate you. We came back to it. So can you talk a little bit about our experience last year and how we went into this year differently?
Yeah, sure. So last year we actually outsourced our campaign management. So the way it works is you pay for Google Ads, you get a little, if you have direct access to the login screen, you have a dashboard and it shows you how all your campaigns are operating. It allows you to add all your keywords. So like a keyword, for example, would be sell my house fast, Texas. Someone types that in, you add that keyword to your campaign. If someone types it in Google, hopefully your ad pops up if you bid enough money, right, against competitors. So you add all your keywords, you manage your campaigns, and that's what we're doing now. But in the past, we outsourced the management. So another company called AdWords Nerds, which is a great company, but they were the ones we were paying. They were managing the campaigns for us. And we were spending like what sounded like a lot of money at the time, but we realized now was not enough. We were dropping like $2,000 a month. And we were like, oh, this sucks. 3 months in, we're like, let's quit. We didn't get any deals, right? And now we've learned through other people's experience and from, I guess, our own research, and now through doing it ourselves, is that we made a couple mistakes. Like, one, I wouldn't recommend anyone outsourcing it. I would recommend doing it yourself, at least at the beginning, because it's very hard to understand the campaign management aspect of the work that's required unless you actually do some of it yourself. And I also don't think it's realistic to have another company give it the attention that it really needs. Like, it just requires weekly touch. And I could just imagine a flat salaried employee in another company just completely blowing that shit off. Like, I just don't really believe most companies are doing a great job at it, straight up. So that's one problem. And two, we were not spending enough money, or we were spending an amount of money that in order to get enough data to see if the campaigns were working, it really would have taken 6 to 12 months. Like, you got to spend money to get to the point where people will see your ad. Like, the more money you spend, the more likely it is your ad pops up. And then you need a certain number of people to click on the ad to have enough data to see, is my conversion metrics good? Am I efficient? What's my cost per lead? We just didn't have enough data. So we tapped out too early.
Nice. So to sum it up, I think we said, hey, we're going to spend more money, right? Like, instead of spending, our budget was like $4,000. So it was about $2,000 for them to run it and $2,000 of ad spend. And we basically said going into this is like, hey, we want to spend $10,000 a month, right? So our money, significantly more money, right? We also said that we want to have it in-house. And while I agree with your sentiment that like you pretty much think it has to be in-house, I would also say that Frank and I have learned as business owners, like maybe we're control freaks, but I also just think we have pretty high standards. So almost everything we've tried to outsource, we've ended up bringing back in-house, just because we're like, these people don't care about this as much as we do. We want to make sure we can control it. And I think this is similar. It's like, hey, if we're spending $10,000 a month here, we want to make sure we care about this as like, it's got to be our number one priority, right? But we did going into this say our experience with AdWords Nerds was so good that we're going to take their course and we're going to learn from them about how to become experts at this.
Yeah, I shouldn't badmouth AdWords Nerds. I think they are a great company because I think their course was a huge value add. Not that we're not affiliate marketing here, but like we paid a couple grand for the course. We both went through it, and they offer a weekly call so that, you know, their experts can help troubleshoot your campaigns. And like, not everyone shows up. In fact, almost no one shows up. So what it tells me is that most people are not willing to put in the work to get this done, because it is somewhat taxing. But dude, like in 2 months, like we're seeing results, and their expectation, like what the expectations they set are pretty much exactly what happened to our campaigns. Is that worth $2,500? Well, if you're spending $10,000 a month, that's $120,000 a year, $2,500 to give you the tools to do it correctly. Yeah, it's worth it, right? So I thought it was like, to your point, like get education. I think going in there and dropping 10 grand without any information, like it's not intuitive enough that an average person is going to figure it out. I don't think, you know?
So how do we how do you do it, right? Like, give me the 30,000 foot view. What does it mean to set up a campaign in Google AdWords?
Well, like you got to set your own budget first. Like strategically, like what are you trying to do? Are you trying to do 1 deal a month, 2 deals a month, 3 deals a month? And like set your budget based off of that. I would say in a competitive market, you won't know if PPC is going to work or not until you've probably spent somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. I don't think like, so I think a lot of people say like 6 to 10, and I don't, maybe that was the number in 2020 or 19, but real estate's more competitive. You mentioned it before. Like SMS is more competitive. Cold calling is more competitive. PPC is not cheap. Like you're going to drop at a minimum 10 grand to figure out if it's going to work for you or not, I think.
So I would just say like, I mean, that's got to be like 5%, maybe 10% of real estate investors overall are going to be willing to do that. So if I read between the lines here, you're saying almost no one should enter this unless they have, you know, 20, 30, $40,000 to invest, because we invest significantly in marketing every month, but most companies are not coming close to that.
Well, this is what I'll say. It's you could invest less and you can get a deal, right? I just think if you don't give yourself enough budget of at least 10 grand, let's say if you're doing a statewide campaign in Texas, let's say, and you're only saying you're gonna do 3 grand for 1 month. Like your odds of success in the long run, if that's how you're approaching this problem statement, is I think very low, right? Because one, you're saying if I don't monetize a deal in the first $3,000 I spend, like I'm going to tap out, right? That they say be consistent. So if you're going to drop whatever you're going to drop the first 3 months, drop the same amount every single month. Make sure you're budgeted for that. So that's like rule number 1. But the thing is like when you first start your campaigns, it's likely that your click-through rate, which is basically the percentage of the time that someone sees your ad to the time that they click on it, is probably not going to be as good as it would be 3 months down the road. Your conversion, which is how many people go to your website and actually become a lead, right? Like that number improves over time. So those numbers are going to suck probably at the beginning. Your bids might be too low. You might not be bidding enough to even be seen on the first page. So like, you need time to make it work, and that time costs money. And if you don't spend enough money, it takes even longer to see if it works, and then you get fatigued, right? So I guess what I'm saying is I would advise people be aggressive, pick a number, a total budget for a 3-month period that you can afford to lose. It might be $10,000, and then like be aggressive in your campaigns. Like don't be too cute with the bidding.
So what's
the number? Take forever.
What's the number that we picked, and then how did we start building these campaigns?
We actually started at 5 grand a month, and then we immediately, upon getting some traction, jacked it up to 10. But that's also because we're a little aggressive. I think most people won't do that, and I don't think you need to do that. But like I guess what I'm saying is like 3 to 5 grand, I think is a good budget. I think if you're trying to spend $500 or $1,000, it's not enough. I think if you want to get data in a 3 to 5 month span or less, you got to spend a little bit of money.
So then once you get your budget locked in, then what do you do? Remember, 30,000 foot view. How does AdWord Nerds, or how do Google Ads work? And the reason I'm trying to kind of break it down Barney style is I think sometimes we assume that everyone is walking step for step with us on this educational journey. But the bottom line is I think this concept is going to be foreign to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, you pick your location. Right. So you've got your budget and you're like, well, where do I do deals? If you're a local investor, like you only do deals in Tampa, it's pretty straightforward, right? You probably pick Tampa. But I think we picked statewide Texas, and we did a central Texas campaign because we're really good at monetizing deals in Waco, Killeen, Texas, and other cities in that area. So we tried to hit a couple counties, and in our experience, the statewide campaign was way more efficient in terms of the cost to get a lead and a deal. So we dropped the county campaign, and like you basically have to go figure that out through trial and error. I mean, like it's where you can kind of like do monetize deals the best. Like I don't know what your thoughts are on like the best strategy in picking location.
I mean, I think that's part of the beauty of what we're doing is it's ever evolving, right? So it's a game, right? It's not like, okay, hey, here's the answer. you constantly have to be looking at what's working well and what isn't working well. And then you could create other campaigns that are comparing the cost per lead. So I think right now we're in Texas. Like generally we're focusing on Florida and Texas for our campaigns anyways, right? But we made the decision recently to nix out Dallas, Fort Worth, and San Antonio, and Houston, Austin, because they were the bigger cities in Texas, right? And now we're starting to look at just the opposite, like, hey, we want to avoid the big, super competitive cities, but I think we also want to avoid the super small towns where only 3 or 4 houses are being sold each year as well. So I think the fascinating thing with Google AdWords is it's easy to get going. Well, generally you can get it going, but the beautiful thing is it's never finished. It's something that the person that is willing to continue to dig around and experiment and try to refine that stuff is going to win. It's not something you can set and forget at all.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, like AdWords nerds will give you all the keywords that they recommend to set up your initial campaign. In fact, I think I straight up followed their template to set up a campaign step by step for the first campaigns. And then, but the money is made in the weekly maintenance. Like they have like a 5-step checklist and you got to do it. Like we were getting our asses kicked for the first 3 to 4 weeks. Like our cost per lead was like over $500 for like almost a month. And I was like, yo, we're going to lose $10,000, which actually we did. For the first month, we just lost $10,000. And now you keep tweaking it, right? Locations, I think, is the biggest lever, right? After a month, we were able to see that we were just getting so many people trying to sell their house in Dallas and Austin. And by the time we even got to them, if they became a lead, someone had offered $100,000 over their asking price already. Like as a virtual wholesaler, those markets are so competitive. We tend to kind of suck at them. Someone's showing up to their house and they're locking that deal up the next morning. We can't do that, right? So it is what it is. But so we eliminated those cities and our efficiency went up. Like our efficiency was 3 times better by the next day, so you have to just keep messing with it and screwing with it, adding negative keywords to keywords and all this other stuff constantly. And it eventually gets good. So it's you're right. It's a long game.
Sure. Okay. So you get it set up. Like we've got it set up now. Let's just talk about how it's going. Like what's our cost per lead? You talk about the campaigns a little bit, and then I'll talk some about like just the operational of how do we handle these leads on the acquisition side.
Yeah. So right now we've got it to where over the last 2 weeks, our cost per lead is right around $200, but the last week it was $127. So we keep getting better there. I think 127 we can sustain as a real business. I think the number of people that see our ad and click on it is like 3.5%, which is considered pretty good. And the people who go to our webpage and then submit it, it's like 20%, which is like amazing. So those, when I've talked to the experts, like those numbers, they're like, oh, it's good. Like rock solid, man. Like you're doing it. But are we profitable yet? Like, no, because once you get these leads in, the operational side of PPC is different, like, which is what you kind of are alluding to, than just doing an outbound marketing deal. So, like, how is it different? Like what pain are we feeling internally from handling all these deals from PPC?
Yeah. So inbound leads, right? Someone who types in sell my house fast is so much more motivated than a landlord that we call and we say, hey, are you interested in selling your house? Right? Like the motivation are worlds apart, right? So these people are so motivated. But the interesting thing is they don't type in sell my house fast, click your website, put their information in, and then just wait around for you to call. Okay. What they do behaviorally is they type in sell my house fast. They go to the first website they click on, they put in their information, and then they go back to Google. They go to the second website and they do it again, and they keep doing it. Right. So how can you win? You have to be the first to contact. Right. So as soon as that lead comes in, we have to make sure we call them, as immediate as possible. Definitely definitely within 1 minute, ideally almost instantaneously, right? We have a 2-step form on our website. So they put in their name, phone number, or I think it's property address, name, phone number, and email address. Then they click next, and then they start filling out all the information about their house. We want to be calling them while they're filling out that second page. So they're still on our website. So that was operational change number 1, is we have to make sure like we have this great sense of urgency. And oh, by the way, initially we had leads coming in at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like 9:30 at night, 4 o'clock in the morning. We're like, should we just wake up in the middle of the night to call these people? Right. So we've adjusted that. So now we're really only having them come in during business hours where we feel like, we can really action. It's actually interesting to think about, is I wonder what our cost per lead would be if we only did the middle of the night, right? Maybe we're not the only person doing that, and we could actually have someone just pulling night shift for us. But I get distracted. Okay, so we get these leads coming in, right? We got to make sure we contact them right away. What we're also realizing is these people want a price, right? Sometimes when we're doing outbound marketing, the landlord, like, it'll take 2 or 3 phone calls, right, to establish rapport, slow play it a little bit, anchor them low, go back and forth. Like we kind of insert patience into the process, where our pay-per-click leads, like, they want an offer, right? Like it's a little different than how we're accustomed to going. Cause I feel like we're having to be more aggressive. We're having to say, hey, this is our price. Right. And then what's also interesting is people are shopping, right? Like, they go, hey, what's your price? And we'll say, hey, we can give you $100,000. And they say, okay, that's great. I'm getting a call from another person right now, and I have 2 more investors coming this afternoon, right? So you also have to figure out, all right, when we say $100,000, is that really what we want to pay? Or are we willing to pay more? Do we need to offer a larger number than that? And generally what we're doing in that situation is we're going to make our offer, and we're going to say, hey, we'll give you $100,000. But realize if someone else offers you more, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that, right? You can look at our track record, you can look at our social media presence and see that we do a lot of deals and we close deals. There's a lot of investors out there that'll lock up deals at a higher price, but then they won't end up closing it. So we talk that a lot, right? And then we just got to realize that some days with pay-per-click, like we were getting 5 to 10 leads a day, and we're still going super hard with our cold calling as well. So there's days we're getting 20 leads, and we haven't gotten 20 leads a day in a while. So we've had to work through, how do we make sure we process all those leads? How do we make sure we prioritize the pay-per-click leads? Because they're going to be super motivated.
Yeah. That's so true. Like, your inbound leads do not fit directly into your outbound process. So like, what disruption have you seen in our sales organization? Like, what wrench is inbound throwing into the equation? Like, why is it hard to manage both?
Well, I think it's a lot different seller, right? Like the seller that we reach out to cold, right? We win because we get to play good old boy, right? Like, hey, we'd love to talk to you about buying this house. If today isn't the right time, no pressure, right? We just want to, if you're done being a landlord, let us know, and we'd be happy to give you a fair market offer, right? And that's generally the tone of many of those conversations, right? Like this patience, this establishing rapport, right? Where, with inbound leads, these people are like, I got to sell my house by the end of the week. What can you do for me? And you're like, whoa, okay, we're jumping right into it. And you're like, well, tell me about the house. And people are just aggressive, right? They're like, how much can you give me? So then you just, after a couple of those calls, you start putting that hat on, that when you get an inbound call, like it's not about establishing rapport nearly as much. It's not about, all the colorful stuff. It's like, let me comp this property. Ideally, when I'm on the phone with this person, because I know I need to make the offer quick, right? Let's say I comp the property at 100K, right? Like, as I'm talking to them, I'm trying my best to comp. I comp it at 100K. I know I got to get it at 70K. So usually within the first couple minutes, especially if they're not super chatty, I'm going, hey, Mr. Seller, I know you're going to talk to some people and they're going to offer you something like $50,000. Okay. The average investor here is probably going to need to be at $50,000. I say that to try to low anchor them. Then I go, given what you're telling me, I think we can come in somewhere between 60 and 65. How does that work for you? Knowing I can go up to 70. But what I'm getting at is we just need to make sure, in the military, we call it flash to bang, right? Like we need to make sure as soon as that lead hits and our ability to make that cash offer, we need to condense that as much as possible and have a sense of urgency in that process. And we're struggling through it right now, right? Like some things I think we're doing good, but we have to figure out, how can we still be great at outbound marketing and handle these inbound leads? How can we wear those two different hats and have those two different processes?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And for context, John and I, our head acquisitions guy, Adam, was on vacation. So we got to sit in his seat while he was gone. We took turns, and it's hard to do. The other challenge it presents is if you're only doing outbound marketing, usually what will happen is your cold caller or whoever's sending text for you they'll have leads, they'll put them in your CRM, and you're going to make your way through the list, right? The closer is going to start calling those people. Maybe you got 20 people on your docket for that day that you want to speak to or follow up with. And then a PPC lead comes in. You're like, well, screw those 20 people. I got to handle this PPC lead because of the urgency, right? So if you're not staffed to handle it, it becomes a huge distraction, right? You might have leads that might get pushed till tomorrow, because you just were too busy talking to PPC leads all day if your campaigns are really hitting home runs, right, or getting a lot of leads. So just a huge operational burden.
So generally in our business, we call it the front half of the business and the back half of the business, right? So front half is acquisitions, back half is asset management, disposition, contract to close, right? So we've gotten 8 contracts in the last 8 days, in a large part because of these inbound leads, right? Like 8 contracts, 8 days, we are rocking and rolling. Hats off to Adam, our acquisitions manager, and his whole team. Like they're crushing it. But Frank, tell me about the backside of the business, right? Because we're like sending a tidal wave to you right now. And on the backside of the business, you guys aren't drowning, but I think you're looking at the wave coming and you're like, I think we might drown really soon. So how has that changed our operations?
I mean, like for some, it's crazy, man. Like we went from a company that was like selling or wholesaling anywhere between probably like 15 to 20 homes at any given time was on our board on the back half of the business. And I counted it up. And now Carlo, our contract to close lead, has about 35, right? So it's like we have a shit ton more volume because you added in another marketing channel. And what most companies in our position tend to do is you hire up the front end, then you overwhelm the back end of your business, and then you hire up after, right? So we're in the unfortunate position of just kind of drowning right now, trying to see what our new normal is. But the other thing that inbound leads, particularly nationwide or statewide PPC campaigns, do to you is like you get houses in places you have no idea what the hell is going on. We have a house right now in a city in Texas. We got it for $10,000, but the population of that town is like less than the subdivision in the house I live in New York. Or like there's like 1,000 people there, So like we got the house for basically free, but we're like, might be the best deal of all time. We still might not be able to fucking move this house. Excuse my language, So the stress that we're seeing right now is like, we used to be able to dispo all the deals by ourselves. We would reach out to cash buyers or people we know in our network and we'll sell them. Right. And if it's a deal, it sells. In this case, it's like, if we can't find someone to help us in that city, we might be screwed. So I guess my advice to anyone adding inbound to an outbound operation is 1, don't assume your existing dispo process or sales process in the back end is going to work. And 2, the more rural or austere the location, like the more likely you need help from outside your organization. I would just say that. So we're definitely going through that. If we can monetize these deals or not, we'll see. Like we'll probably find out by the next episode.
And talk to me a little bit about wholesaling versus flipping.
Well, do you mean for PPC leads or in general, or?
I mean, I was thinking PPC leads, but I think in general, if you have thoughts there.
Well, I think a lot of wholesalers started flipping. We've talked about this on the show because the cost per contract, it was getting so competitive in the front end. People were looking for ways to justify the additional spend in marketing and sales on the front. So they're flipping to increase their profit margins. They're doing more work and incurring more risk to make the businesses run. That's what people were doing, us included, right? Not ashamed to say it. But now, since we have so many deals, I'm like, shit, do we want to be flipping 10 houses? Because we already have some flips that are ongoing and managing right now, and have to sell 35 houses at the same time with our staff, right? And I think part of it's like when you add a new marketing channel, you might have to like ease the operational burden. If you feel like you can't handle any more flips, like maybe you can't handle any more flips, right? And I think that's kind of where we're at. But the other thing regarding PPC and selling the house in the middle of nowhere is like some people might do it because we got a house at a great price, but I'm not buying that $10,000 house. And I don't think you want to either. We talked about it in a town of a couple hundred people. Like it's just going to sit in our books really for a long time. It's going to be tough to get loans on it if you have to hold it for a while. Insurance might be impossible to come by unless you go local. They're just a pain in the butt. Like we're just not really going to be good at flipping those houses. So we're going to try to get them into the hands of people that can.
It's tough, right? I think coming into 2021, I think we went to flipping because we were ahead of the investors. I think we had the pulse of the market and we could tell that prices were going up. And I think wholesalers realized that faster than most investors. Investors were kind of like, no, these prices are outrageous. I'm never going to buy that. And then 2 months later, they had caught up and they were all waiting in line and paying the price that they were listed for, right? So I think that was part of it. And then I think the big thing is scale, right? Like, are we a wholesaling company? Are we a flipping company? I think we've determined we're a real estate investing company that's opportunistic to both market, asset class, and macroeconomic conditions, right? So what does that mean? That means we want to be the type of company that can wholesale or flip depending on the conditions. And I think as you scale, flipping 10 houses is a lot harder than wholesaling 10 houses, right? So every time we make one of these big jumps where we go from 5 deals a month to 10 deals a month, then we go 10 to 15, and then we go 15 to 20, right? Every time we kind of hit one of those ceilings and have a breakthrough, we're like, dude, we cannot do this many flips because flips just take a ton of work and it's way more risky. So I think it's the workload as we scale, and it's also the risk, and it is making sure that everyone on the back half of our business doesn't lose their mind as they get crushed by the volume that acquisitions is pushing.
There's definitely a lot of truth to that. Yeah, it's hard. It's more work to flip a house than wholesale it, especially on a great deal. Like you can wholesale a great deal in 30 minutes if you know the right people, right? I would say this to play a little devil's advocate though. If you're someone who's flipping half your houses or a quarter of your houses and wholesaling the rest, like we have been, you also might be in a position where you have a decision to make. Like, are you flipping enough houses that you're going to hire a new project manager only to manage those flips, right? And we did not decide to do that. So in our business, our contract to close person, they have 3 employees that they can delegate stuff to, but there's not someone that only manages flips. So the problem you run into is like, this person's managing relationships with buyers, they're selling houses, they're doing the project management that comes with disposition of homes. And then you're asking them to do flips. It's kind of like a completely separate job, right? So we might just be caught in an in-between spot, right? Like we need to make X amount of more dollars to hire that rollout to make it make sense. But then we're adding PPC in, and you don't want to flip those freaking houses, right? But we still have extra wholesale volume. So I think, like you said, like we're continuing to learn and we'll continue to evolve based off market conditions. It might just be that this ain't the right time for us to flip 10 houses or 20 houses this month. You know what I mean? Like we got other shit to figure out, Yeah,
no, I agree, right? Like I definitely agree. And maybe that is a trigger, right? Having a project manager, maybe that's a trigger that we pull eventually. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. But I do want to at least tease our travel to Oklahoma next week, right? Like let's tease why we're going to Oklahoma. And I'm sure we're going to do an episode on it quick. So why are we going back to the motherland, to our birthplace, the home of the field artillery, boom, boom. Why are we going back to Fort Sill, Lawton, Oklahoma, Frank?
Yeah, so John and I were both artillery officers and got our training, our first training in the Army after commissioning in Lawton, Oklahoma, home of Fort Sill. And we we're doing self-storage. So we're going to buy a self-storage facility. We have one under contract. I think it's an awesome deal. It's a value add opportunity. It's on the main thoroughfare in Lawton. So it gets a lot of heavy traffic. The occupancy is low. So they have a lot of vacancy, a lot of potential rent that they're not collecting. And there's some operational expenses that are kind of high. We think we can reduce those. So we're basically got a value add commercial real estate opportunity under contract, and we're going to go look at it. Right. So we're going to do our first swag at due diligence. So I'm super, super excited. And it's like kind of scary because like this is more than triple the contract value of our most expensive house we've ever done. For some people, this isn't a big deal, but for us it is, So how do you feel about it?
I'm pumped, man. I like adding zeros to our deals, right? I think we'll always have a love for single family, small multifamily, but I think looking at other asset classes makes sense, right? Like as virtual real estate investors, like we want to be open to anywhere in the country. And I think being open to other asset classes makes a lot of sense, right? And we've been looking at multifamily for a long time and, kind of realized that our skill set is much more aligned with mobile home parks or self-storage units. So I'm excited to go to self-storage because I think we're going to be able to use our acquisitions funnel and a lot of our same processes to lock down self-storage units. So I'm super pumped. I'm pumped to talk about it more. We're still going to continue investing a ton in single family stuff. We're looking at other asset classes as well. And we hope to use the podcast to document and kind of talk through some of that journey, right? And some of the successes and some of the failures too. So
yeah, I think it'll be fun. And I think our story and how we've moved through real estate is like very, very typical to people that grow and be really successful. It's like you start in single family, you hustle your butts off, you scale a little bit, then you expand into commercial. Like there's nothing unique about what we're doing. So hopefully a lot of people can get value out of it. And then maybe some of the millionaires out there will look back, be like, oh, that was me 5 years ago. Like, or, I don't know. So like, I think there's a lot of angles to make it interesting. So I'm pumped about it.
For sure. Okay, check out vrei.co, vrei.co. Get on our newsletter. Also, check out our YouTube channel. If you listen to all the podcasts, you probably don't need to listen or go to the YouTube channel, but we've been doing a better job of cutting that stuff up and making kind of highlights in shorter clips. And then we're also working on stepping up our Facebook and Instagram game. So check us out there. But thanks so much for listening. Frank, you shouldn't be surprised. Take us away, brother.
Thanks for listening to another episode. Super pumped about what we're building over here, and I hope to see you guys next week. Peace.